Peace, power, and love. It's your one and only Kansu Sheshmu, and we are live with yet another Team Osiris live broadcast. And tonight's discussion is going to be about another African tradition, which is sometimes mislabeled voodoo, hoodoo. Traditionally, it's VODUN, and it is an African science, and it is also a South American and Central American science that has many names and many connotations that come from the Yoruban culture in Africa, and it has taken on many interpretations and many forms. And of course, some question, what is the actual practice of VODUN? There are many different types. Its roots come from the O.S.I.R.I.S system. Once again, that is a classical system in Africa, Yoruban system. And this kind of sparked from, I believe, a post that we had on our group page on Facebook, Team O.S.I.R.I.S. And all you have to do is go on Facebook, type in Team O.S.I.R.I.S, and you will actually one soul infinitely resurrected in spirit, and you will see our Facebook page. And the question was posed: is VODUN a science? Is VODUN a science? What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to open the panel and to our Team Osiris members. From my right and your left, Brother Melvin. Peace, brother. What's going on with
you? Peace, brother. Peace to the team. Team Osiris, definitely on the horizon. Peace to the audience and fellow members out there.
Yes, sir. And I will say, normally in tradition, this would be the show that I don't do it. I didn't open in fashion of Papa Legua, Ishu Legua, because I'm a little under the weather and I don't want to deal with the cigar smoke. You don't do that when you're under the weather. So I still give honor and respect to Papa Legua, Ishu Legua, as he opens the doorway and gives us understanding and clarity. So, Brother Christopher, how are you, man? Brother Christopher, are you there?
I'm back, Consul. I apologize, brother.
Yes, sir. How's life?
It's good. It's good. Peace and blessings to the panel, and peace and blessings to everybody out in the audience. You know, I hope everybody's doing well. And if not, I hope things get better in general.
Yes, sir. And again, another Brother Joseph. What's going on, King? With the beautiful Dominican flag. What's up, Brother Joe?
Peace, King. Peace, King. Team O.S.I.R.I.S definitely on the horizon. Yeah, you know, peace to everybody. And that's it. Let's get it going.
Yes, sir. And last but definitely not least, Brother Heru Imakut. What's up, Brother Heru? What's going on?
Hey, peace, family. Peace, family. Peace to the panel. What's going on to the viewership?
Yes, sir. So I'll open the floor to the question: is VODUN a science? So open the floor.
All right. Now, before we get to that question, I do want to start with the base definition of what science is. And so, my definition for science is basically the intellectual and practical activity encompassing the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation and experiment. That is a definition of science. In other dictionaries, you might get a different response, a different wording, but that's a generic definition. And I say yes. VODUN, uh, you know, that has the cosmology and a lot of the spiritual aspect of the system as well as the religious aspect. But the practicality part of it, where they're using nature and they're studying nature and they may be invoking nature, that is where science actually comes to play. Uh, I use an example in that very post when you talk about the healers or the doctors. The method that they use to heal or fix someone is a scientific method. Somebody mentioned the placebo effect as a scientific method that was used in voodoo, but it was already used prior to science even properly analyzing it and denoting what it was. So we have to understand that there's two sides to the spiritual system. It's not just religious. It's not just the spiritual system itself, because there are practitioners of it that apply methods passed down to them, and they use those methods from a scientific perspective to get whatever it is they're trying to get across. If you're a healer, you're using that to heal people. If you're trying to help fix up relationships or anything else, you're using that from a scientific background with proper methodology to do so. And most people, when they hear voodoo or voodoo, they're always thinking that it's just a religious aspect. And I think that's something that we need to let people know more of. We're not going to go too in depth tonight, but this is just a discussion with the panel. Now open the floor.
All right. Anyone else? Like I said, I'm opening the floor to the initial interpretation of that claim.
Yeah, peace. Well, you have to go into the definitely. My brother Melvin went into the definition of science, and also how voodoo deals with nature, and the spirits. The spirits. People like to associate voodoo with cult like worship and things like that. They don't have a proper understanding of what voodoo is. They think it's merely a religion, but hold on one second. Hold on one second. Yo, Ice.
Brother Haru or Brother Christopher, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead, brother.
I was about to say, from my perspective, I think it all breaks down to breaks down to your personal perspective. Because I mean, if we're looking at it from an organized science perspective, no, voodoo or VODUN is not science. But from a cultural aspect and how they use it organically, to them, yes, that is a science. So I just think it just depends on which way you're looking at it. Are you looking at it from an academic perspective, or are you looking at it from someone within the culture? And yield the floor.
This is Brother Chris. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. So I work with a brother I work with actually a few brothers from Ghana. One of the brothers from Ghana, they all speak Twi, but some may speak a more pidgin Twi, which is a more of a broken down version, that different people in different regions, they can all speak together. But this brother I work with, I'm going to call him by the name Obang. It's his nickname. It's not his real name. I'm calling him. His name is Obang, and he speaks 9 different languages. This brother, we've gotten very deep, and he obviously likes me a lot because, he was revealing some, you know, some things, you know. And he had on his shoulder, looks like 2 scratch marks. It looks kind of like cut in or burned in. He was telling me how he went to a voodoo priest or a priest, you know, and he paid a certain amount of money, and that if someone was trying to poison him, let's say, he said one time he had came to the States, the US, gone back to Ghana, you know, met up with a couple of his friends and things like that. They went to the bar. And what I'm saying, I've not made this up myself whatsoever. I'm saying like exactly what was told to me. He went to the bar. When he grabbed the cup, that it would fizzle or something like that, and that meant like somebody was trying to poison him. And you know, we sat for a little bit, and we're talking, and I was trying to understand it, because to some degree it has to, obviously it's psychological, but we kept talking, and I'm like trying to get what he's trying to, like, you know, but how does this work? And what he told me, he said, brother, it's herbs. They use herbs. So to some degree it would be medicinal, scientific to some degree. From what this brother told me, the actual individuals that really do it, they do use herbs. You know, I've read books and everything, certain things like that, but which may be like other aspects of it. So, I mean, me personally, it's either here or there, and I could see why. I mean, because, I mean, if you look at all types of medicine and things like that, originally, where do you get these chemical compounds? You get them from herbs. So I yield the floor.
Okay,
Yeah.
brother. Okay. Go ahead, Joseph.
Peace. Yeah, like the brother Chris was saying, it definitely deals with science to a large degree, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because the spirits, and the spirits having to do with nature, you know, such as if you're a farmer, you're giving praise to a certain spirit, you know what I mean, for your crops to grow, and you need to, you know, to be in tune with nature, basically, you know. So that's, to me, that's a study of science. And even like the zombie thing, you know, it's a fish, from what I understand. It's like a fish as is human beings or whatever, and makes them go into a state of paralysis, and getting zombies and stuff from. Yeah, you know, pardon me for 1 second, my daughter, you know.
You don't have to excuse because of your child. Never that. That's okay. While the brother attends to a higher priority than this show, definitely gotta take care of his baby. That's for sure. But that just shows how dedicated we are and how much we value family. One thing I'll say, I think we got to get to the root of this problem, and that's miseducation and the mismanagement of dealing with terminology. And we get so pro-black that we forget that the more pro-black we get, the more European we are, because we start pulling on resources that are generated by their oppressor to begin with. The term VODUN is a West African practice, and it is found by the Fawn people and the Iwe people, the Gon people of primarily Ghana, Central Togo, the Kabaye people, the Mina people, okay, and Southern and Central Benin, in those areas. So you've had many different variations of the word VODUN, which go into the African diaspora. When you talk about Haitian Vodou, Puerto Rican Voodoo, Cuban Voodoo, Dominican Voodoo, Brazil Vodun, all of these variations of the term Vodun has to do with the spirit. Now, somebody linear, you know, and I joke about this. When I talk about spirituality, or I say spirit, the first thing they do is go to a European's rendition of it. And it's going to say breathing. Well, that's what the European doesn't have a cultural dynamic on that term spirit, because they didn't use it. So All they know is that the spirit is associated with the breath, the spirit force, okay? And then it's rendered to a European's perspective that it means breathing, but it doesn't mean that. It means the S that connects us all and interchanges in form and shape because it has none, similar to the mind and things of those natures. So when we talk about the VODUN and we talk about the spirit, it's that interconnection between self and your ancestors. And it's not looking at your ancestors in a literal form, as if they're standing over there or they're up in the sky somewhere. It's connecting with those memories that you carry about your ancestors and you bringing forth those memories to enhance your mentality and to give you a sense of being and connection. See, these things are allegorical. They're not literal. And so we tend to get objective for the wrong reasons out of the Europeans' eyes, because we hear buzzwords. I talked about propaganda a very long time ago. The European did a really good job of making words like spirituality, religion, church, the words that they defined in the first damn place, offensive. So when we're not immersed in our culture and we hear church, spirituality, all this kind of stuff, we say, oh, the byproduct of the slave master. Woo, 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 woo. The slave master didn't do that because the slave master didn't have a sense of family. Slave master had a sense of ethnic superiority. So, of course, they're going to introduce something to you that you ultimately will despise. Remember, for Americans especially, throughout all of the Americas, 3 regions of America to be exact, the slave master gave that spiritual responsibility to the overseer, who happened to be African, and forced the overseer to speak certain things and certain interpretations of the Bible for the same purpose, and that is to control, and gave a altered and marred account of religious texts worldwide, from the Quran to the Torah to the Bible. The Bibles have thousands of versions of the Christian Bible, or the Roman Christian Bible, which is the Catholic Bible. So if you're not educated on just theology alone, you're going to take these things for face value. So it's a lot deeper than just, oh, religion is by the white man. No, it's not. No, it's not. The principles of community spirituality came thousands of years before the white man corrupted it. So we're stuck in what the white man has done in modern history, in the beginning of the AD cycle. That is very young. In our culture, you look at our culture, that's a child. So we have to get beyond that barrier to be able to accept the spirituality that lies in religion for an African-centered individual. Totally different from a modernized, miseducated individual. Secondly, and I'm going to open the floor for the panel's concept. When we start talking about education, the educational system, and I think I said this a couple of days, show progress ago. The educational system is a byproduct of the European to ensure commerce in the form of chattel slavery and employment, indentured employment. You are indentured today because you fill out an application. That's a contract. That's what indentured means. A group of words that are set in a certain syntax that empower you to those words. Slaves were brought here during the Jim Crow period with an indenture on the ship's manifest. And it would read, this is what these people are for. And then they were indentured to indentured servants that were paid to handle the chattel. So you're going to get those connotations because you're used to your oppressed lifestyle. And that is called repression, because you are assimilating to another culture because it took over yours and it's dominant in your life. So when we talk about the university system or the universal system, it is a byproduct of the Greco and Roman culture, because they created the universities and the colleges. Well, they give out a degree, and you have a degree of knowledge, and you think that that knowledge encompasses everything. It doesn't. That is just the westernized and globalized form of the schooling system in a white supremacist lifestyle. We use it because we are in bondage and we are not at the peership of our oppressor. So we use it to generate and use commerce money within that capitalistic system. That's the only purpose for that. That's what gave a problem to W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington at a very high point between 1900 and 1930, where we were business owners and we had private wealth, because W.E.B. Du Bois felt that liberation would be made through just education. And Booker T. Washington felt that education, holding on with a sense of ownership and protecting your ethnic culture, would also be needed. So just science and just a degree does not make you conscious. It makes you learned, i.e. educated. It has nothing to do with your ethnic center, because we have grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, mothers that don't have not one degree. Some of them didn't even graduate 6th grade. Okay? And they have kept our families close-knit as best they could. If one was to critique from a linguistic point of view, some of these books that are written in college level, they're written at a 6th grade level so that you can understand this shit. They're written at a 6th grade level. That's how important education is. Education only tells you that you need to know science, which is math, and reading, and you are considered intelligent. When there are many intelligences, we had to show a few shows back, and it's going to keep reoccurring. The Queen Neferkar from Team All-Set spoke of the 9 intelligences. The 9 intelligences that encompass you. So you are far greater than just a few subjects that the European tells you you're skilled at. So let's get to the root of this issue about misinterpreting VODUN. Because VODUN is a system that's not based on Western curriculum. It is a spiritual science system that is based on an ethnic group of parameters, specific to a certain groups of tribes within the Western African spiritual system. Okay? I do want to open the floor now, and I don't know if Queen Neferkar, as you guys can see, she's in the show, on your left. Are you available to speak, Queen? I know you look busy, but you can go ahead.
Come back to me if you can.
All right. Okay, yeah, I'll open the floor. Anyone wants to digress, I yield the floor.
Yes, I do agree with you as far as us using Europeanized education as a standard to properly judge things that are outside of that circumference. I think we do ourselves and the people themselves injustice to judge them that way. And like you said, by being super pro-black, it does kind of make us like a European. We think that way because we're thinking in ways that are non-cultural to the very people that we're talking about. So when you say voodoo, the best explanation that you're ever going to get is not in the dictionary. It's got to be from the people who practice and live that culture. And I think for anybody today to try to do that, it should be classified as highly offensive to the people themselves to try to use another culture to identify something that is outside of it. So I definitely agree with you.
Key points.
Yes.
Brother Christopher, are you there?
Yeah, peace.
Yeah, go ahead, King.
I agree with what Brother Melvin was saying, and again, I mean, it's really hard to try to use European terms when trying to speak about certain African cultures and methods and modes of communications between individuals within that culture or community. For instance, I mean, there's a method, again, speaking with my brothers from Ghana. Brother, you know, his name is, you know, Prince. And, you know, he was telling me about an individual a little bit older than him. You know, they like soccer over there. They play soccer a lot. He's telling me that this brother, you know, told everybody, yo, watch this. I'm going to make the rain stop. Dug a hole, placed some type of circle around it, went by some tree or something, grabbed some type of, I don't know, whatever was a tree, said it was a certain type of like plant that they have out there. Placed it in a circle, but at the end of the soccer game, dude caused it to rain. Now, I know psychologically, and from things I know, in a Western point, you know what I mean, because I live in a Western world, you know what I mean, how I can see how that occurred, you know what I mean? But within that cultural context, I'm saying you can't try to describe another culture by other cultural words. It's just like certain languages, things don't translate easily between each other. You know, it's the same concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, and I'll say this, and those are critical points. We tend to, with religion, it's a difficult situation because religion is an organized form of spirituality, and religion and spirituality intertwine at certain points, and they kind of mirror each other, almost identical. But religion is organized by men to prostrate in a methodical fashion conducive to their ethnic group's liking and what that ethnic group adopts to as a group. Now, when we start analyzing these things and we start looking at it, we got to make sure that we're looking at it from a lens of the practitioner. And so you see a lot of images in VODUN, and they do have, you have the religious aspects of VODUN. Because VODUN, like many of the non-white traditional continental religions, were infiltrated and adapted by an oppressor that would suppress the actual organic interpretation. And that's happened in every religious text, from the Torah to the King James version, I stress version of the Christian Bible, to the Evangel, to the Talmud, to the Septuagint. These things, I can go on and on and on with different type of religious texts. So if we were to cherry pick a particular sector, always go to the cultural source. And in certain cultures, you will see things that will be extremely offensive to you, especially when we talk about the African culture, because it is so wide and diverse. You know, in Africa, they eat everything moving: cats, rats, dogs, slugs, insects. You know, they eat everything moving. It's a cultural norm. Okay. And I'm not eating a cat, rat, or dog. I'm not eating insects because I wasn't raised to. Now, if I would have been raised to, I probably would. If it's in my cultural norm, I'm going to do that. But in my logic center, hey, that's crazy. I'm not doing that. So we're going to see a lot of crazy things in different religious groups. And so we get this trigger of fear because we're told Illuminati. We're told that the group is a group of white people that are secretly controlling the world and all of this. Well, these things stem down, they trickle down to us in how can I say, premeditated forms of information to steer our thought process. So you're going to get those kind of connotations when you're dictated to. When someone dictates to you what to do, they're ordering you to do something. So if I'm giving diction, someone's writing down, that's why it's called a dictionary. It's a book of diction. And that's why the romanticists were like, boom, that's a chair. That's an apple. That's a log. That's a tree. And so the redactors, yep, that's what it is, sir. Boom, boom, boom. And then whatever was dictated to the redactor was published. That even started with Herodotus as scribes, i.e. futurely called redactors, and further on called peripheral journalists would write these things down. And then those things would get published under the guise of oppression. And that's when you had your earliest forms of propaganda. So when people try to act like history is so old and we're so far apart, we're so different. No, we're not. It's not too much. Not too many things that change in the human dichotomy. When we talk about the human dichotomy, things change very subtle over a very long period of time. It's not an immediate and abrupt change, okay, that happens within our paradox. All right, so these things happen over a period of time. Our brother Joseph, I know you may wanted to finish expounding, because I know you had to step away for a minute. So I yield the floor to you, brother Joseph. Go right ahead.
Yeah, peace, man. Sorry for the inconvenience, man. I have my daughter had to rock her to sleep. Yeah, definitely, it's a science in my opinion, you know, because it deals with nature and the aspects of it. Is there maybe some spookiness to it? Yeah, of course, you know, like most religions or ways of life. But I think it's fairly sound. You know what I mean? I don't see it as a bad practice, you know. And coming from a Haitian Dominican background myself, although I don't practice Santeria or Voodoo, you know, it's been around me all my life. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's definitely a science. And apologize for the earlier.
It's not a problem. I'm Brother Melvin. Did you want to expound, Brother Queen Nefrika? Or Brother Heru, we have you back. I know you had dropped. I know you're busy as well. Did you want to add your input, Brother Heru? Because you didn't get an opportunity.
Nah, I'm good at this moment right now. Gotta hear some more dialogue before I chime in.
Okay. All right. Yes. We have Brother. Well, I don't know if Brother Kufu has been keeping up with the broadcast, but Brother Kufu of Team Osiris has joined the panel. Brother King, do you have some things you want to expound on in regards to the subject matter?
What exactly is the subject matter?
Well, we're carrying on from this morning with is VODUN a science and things of that nature.
Is voodoo a science? I would say it's based off some level of observation and your ability to know what the hell you're doing. So if we're gonna deal with the, you know, science from an aspect of observation, there is levels of that within the system of voodoo. There are things that people do that they are able to see that works when they constantly do a certain ritual, a certain practice, or a certain way about going about doing things, you know, their modus operandi. So, but there's a lot of things that do become outdated that still get stuck in tradition. And that's kind of like what, for the most part, the world is seeing from the perspective of what voodoo is. Voodoo is like some outdated, underdeveloped ideology that has no place in the real world. But yeah, there's applicable things that are in the voodoo systems that, you know, you can observe and that, you know, and that actually brings about, you know, effects. How you doing, Sister Nefrika, Brother Melvin, Chris, and Joseph and Heru?
Peace. I'm doing good. How you doing?
Peace, bro.
What's up?
Peace, my brother.
Well, yeah, that's you know, and that's a very a fair assessment, because again, that's that thin line of science and religion and what science is. And Melvin gave a good definition of science. And when we talk about science, it's what's observable, what's physically observable. Now we're talking about the elements of physics, what we can physically observe, and then have fallibility in testing things against it, gives us a rendering and understanding of it. And this is why I'm very adamant about this, because a lot of tribal, I use that term loosely for relativity of the audience, a lot of tribal people are disrespected and trodden on for the auspicity of learning something. We got to think about this when we talk about those that have an affinity for Kemet. I have a Kemetic name, and because I do appreciate the monolithic establishment of what is called Egypt, Tamaray, Kemet. However, I do know that the information that was brought forth, the archaeology and anthropology that was used, was quite disrespectful to our culture system, because we were messing with the remains of the bodies of our ancestors. We also had what was called canoptic jars that are highly spiritual and holy in our system, because these were the organs of our loved ones as we use as communications between one another in an astral plane, from an astral sense. Okay, so it was not from a religious spooky sense. It was understanding that there are 12 systems of man, and that astral system, where that nothingness is, or the activity of the mind, or the aura, or whatever you choose to call it, depending upon your cultural group, was disturbed when they were unearthed and then excavated and examined. That would be disrespectful to that culture, which would be our culture, to mess with the resting place of our elders and our loved ones. So in that, we get information, but at what cost? And who championed those things? Were the continental Africans digging up their grave sites? I asked that question to the panel. Were the continental Africans digging up Egypt and digging up Western and Sub-Saharan Africa, discovering all about self? Were we doing that by digging up? Because we came before the scientists. We were here before the scientists. So did we dig up our elders' graves to find out more about us?
Knew about us already. We didn't need to dig up bones. We had more respect for our ancestors than to go digging them up to find out who we are.
Okay.
I would beg to differ. It depends on like which geographical location you're dealing with. No, people in Western Africa didn't travel. They traveled all the way to Eastern Africa to dig up the bodies of, you know, those that have passed beyond and had illustrious tombs. But you did have people in East Africa on that Nile Valley who were involved in tomb raiding, who would dig those tombs up, and they would actually take what was in them.
But yeah, they did that more as like to steal. You know, they weren't digging it up to find out who they were.
I wouldn't say they dug them up to find out who they were, but there are cases of where bodies have been moved and things of that nature because of certain other exterior elements that were taking place. But they were doing that, you know, within the valley. That's why they had laws against that, you know what I'm saying, to desecrate a tomb. So that was something that was taking place, but it was still pretty much something that you would have to probably sneak and do, or somebody would have to actually have insight to the actual location of the tomb, because some of those tombs nobody would actually know where they were at because they were under such scrutiny by the pharaoh and the governmental system that was in charge of burying these bodies in these particular locations. So there were a lot of inside jobs when people would go back in there and take things out. Now, what they did with them and things of that nature, I can't say for sure. But just to add on to what Brother Consul was speaking on, I would say that there's a certain text, certain passage in some of the literature. I think one of them is a coffin text for sure. I know where they actually take the body and they assign different parts of the body to certain deities. Like the head was considered an aspect of Ra, the tongue was considered an aspect of Jehudi, the limbs, the arms, the legs were considered the aspects of the four sons of Heru. We know the four sons of Heru were certain aspects of the four corners of the earth. And so what they kind of what they were doing was adding, what they were doing was trying to give you a perception of a universal you, like a you that's bigger than you, that's really associated with more than what a commoner would know, to bring you to a level of understanding the totality of reality. Science does do that in certain aspects when you learn about the atoms in the body, which existed for 13.8 billion years, or how certain chemicals break down, certain aspects of who we are break down and go back into certain parts of nature. But no, definitely not a science being applied to digging up certain tombs and trying to figure out who we are. But I mean, just to play the devil's advocate, there is literature which states that all that stuff would be in ruins and it wouldn't mean nothing anyway, because if they were talking about that in the ancient world, and then we have people in the modern world going back digging that stuff up to try to find out more about what was going on, or whether they a lot in the first place they was actually just taking shit just to have shit because there was gold, there were a lot of natural resources that was worth a lot of money, taking it. But then it became like, okay, we're going to study this stuff. So it's a gift and a curse, because we wouldn't know about it if they didn't do it. And that's my take on that.
You do pose valid points there. I would just like to add, because I've yet to see the people who actually live in that region, culturally, be the ones responsible for digging the place up. I mean, it doesn't seem like
the Nubians, the Sudan, or the people more further down to the in the south. You seen the video, the Black Land, the pharaohs of the Black Land, the Black pharaohs of Egypt. I think everybody pretty much saw that. You had actually black people showing these people where this stuff is at. They're showing them, like, okay, this is an old tomb, or they're actually showing them because they know, and they want, more people to be attracted to that area. So they, those people, they know where a lot of stuff is at, and they're actually showing foreigners who actually have the resources to come in and excavate that. And those people eventually work for those people who come in and want to excavate those areas. So
yeah, that's interesting. That they would do that and not find it disrespectful.
Well, one thing that again, understanding culture, and I'm not a big proponent for looking at the continent of Africa in such a linear lens. When we talk about things like the coffin text, the pyramid text, things like that, all these are religious texts, and they deal with mostly burial, afterlife, and a different form of life, because they understood that birth has an opposite, death. Birth and death deal with the physical composition of the spirit, and the spirit is housed in a physical body. And that physical body, in some religious systems, because remember, there were different cosmological systems within the Egyptian orthodoxy that had different connotations of the same source. Some of the chief deities were different. One was Amun-Ra, one was Ta, so forth and so on. They changed as you went through different locations and different areas. What was synonymous was the respect of the afterlife. So as we look going into modern times, we truly can't fathom 31 BC talking in 2016. We can only rely on empirical data, which is written or visual observational data. But we can't get into the inner workings and the quantumization of these cultures. And that's why we're still ongoing and learning through anthropology, biology, and the different ologies or studies that were adapted by some of our people, but were developed by foreigners and invaders because they needed that data. We didn't need that data for whatever intent and purposes. It can benefit us now for history. But let's say medical, for medicinal purposes. Well, there were herbs and things like that that gave way based on some of those conditions that we found as we excavated some of these sites and found some bodies as we were industrializing areas, and you'd find some fossils. Unbeknownst to you, you wouldn't even know that it was a holy land or a group of settlers had lived there anciently. So in the progression of man and man's dominance over the earth, then these things came about. But prior to that, man still existed in harmony and coexisted, regardless of a lifespan. Those things started becoming issues as man started figuring out, who am I? Who am I? They started creating different ideals. Where did we come from? Who are we? Why do we live this long? Why do we die? Why do we get sick? And you started writing literature to paint pictures in your mind of the unseen, to give some type of validity to the unseen. Henceforth, philosophy, metaphysics, see, things like that, even physics, even getting into quantum mechanics, right? And understanding certain things involving quantumization. Because when we even talk about atoms to this day, they're 99.9999 not here. They don't exist. Atoms are almost not here. But we had to give an understanding based on the effects of what atoms do upon us in retrospect to other planets in our system. But none of us have stepped on Jupiter. We've been able to observe it by means of a mechanical device due to the advancement of technology. But no one has ever touched Jupiter. But we say it's there because of science and technology, not just science and technology, both that are foundations of industry and development and cultures and governments and money that's needed to create that technology. So we have to take all of that into accord when we start assessing religion and science. And I think a lot of people don't do that. I really do. I think they're kind of linear in that assessment. It takes a lot more than just a couple of bones, some metanetter, and a couple of pots to say,
yo, you going in, man.
That's what that is, guys.
That is funny.
You know what I'm saying?
Yo, man.
Yeah, if we dig deeper, we'll find out that a lot of the people we revere kind of sold us pretty cheap. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. And what was the original question again? So I make sure I'm staying on topic.
Oh, no problem, man. I know we kind of flowing here. The original, because we're talking about science and religion and VODUN, and we can talk about the system of VODUN all we want and sound like a dictionary if we want to. But I think the undertone is religion and the science that can be found in religion. So we started getting into the quantumization of one particular religion called VODUN. And in that conversation, we started talking about the ancestors, because most religions deal with ancestor worship. They come with the term God. Well, that's a European construct, but the European construct got the term God from someone else because they were able to observe and usurp that culture's ideology and condense it to their own culture's ideology. So did we dig our own resting places up? Khufu made some brilliant assessments. So did Brother Haru. They both made some very valid assessments. Did we, as continental peoples of Africa, dig up our own grave sites in learning Medu and digging up these sacred places? Did we commit a sin by even digging up this area and other places like it in Western Africa, Sub-Saharan?
Great question. I can't necessarily give the direct answer to Western Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, but I'm going to say this, and if I see it occur here, then I'm going to have to say that for certain practices to continue, that why not? One of the things I know in ancient Kemet, whatever, was the fact that things weren't always popping like all the time. They weren't always at their best. The literature, the writing, the art, the monuments, the artistic style, it wasn't always at its best. Sometimes you had people that, because tombs and things like that were being walked in even at that earlier stage, so it wasn't just Europeans that came in and was just going through the stuff. But they would go through, and that's how you would have like people like Ramses and things like that would be able to have a renaissance. Would be able to take things to the next level because you had seen things. You've seen glory days, mind you. A lot of the monuments and things like that we see were covered, in tons and tons of sand because of like sandstorms. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna go back to like West Africa and things like that too. Is that I'm pretty sure I've seen burials where they would bury certain kings like underground and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I'm also aware that you would have people, you got assholes, thieves and robbers and things like that would break into these tombs and things like that to steal gold, stuff like that. So I see it like highly plausible, like
And see, this is how I see that. 1 second, I just want to make this analogy. This is how I see what you just said, and Khufu reiterated that earlier. It's just like your uncle, who you love so much, your favorite uncle. You don't know the history of your uncle, but your elders do. You don't know he's an alcoholic. He probably snorted coke in his young years. You don't know. But he always comes, he brings you some candy, he takes you to the show, or he bought your first baseball glove, a baseball bat. You don't know that years ago, he broke in your house and stole your dad's or mom's TV. Then he broke in the garage and maybe stole some tools to sell them for his habit. But you don't know, because your elders wanted to keep the family cycle going, but they also know they had some bad things in their closet. What makes people think that didn't happen back then? They think that these modern behavioral problems are just modern. This is what's funny to me. We don't look at these things with a sense of family and culture. We don't look through that lens. We look through a doctor, European's lens. Let me examine this Negro. But we don't realize that these are groups of people that had group problems. You had the black sheep, you had foolishness, you had thieves, you had families disrespecting families. What is ISIS doing today? Okay, you're oppressing us. You won't let us even deal with our own culture. We're going to destroy these damn artifacts because we ain't going to let you make money off of them. So we're going to tear them up because you won't even let us come and deal with our own people. We tearing them up then. because the government is oppressing our ability to live our culture. They wouldn't just randomly mess up spiritual icons if it wasn't for a revolutionary mindset. So this is the question I pose to the panel. You know, maybe we need to educate our people to look through a different lens. But go ahead, Brother Kufu. I just wanted to add that because you sparked that when you said that, Chris. Go ahead, Brother Kufu.
Yeah, just I want to let us take a step back and just realize that, you know, 5,000 years ago, us who are living now will be considered living in the future. But 5,000 years ago, the people that was living then would be considered living in the present. And then the people that, you know, maybe 50,000 years before them were considered living in the past. So, but right now in our present moment, 200 years from now, people are going to look back on us. It's going to be the past. So we have to look at this thing as like this past, present, and future thing is like really all one thing. There's really no such thing as past, present, and future in that context, because it kind of seems like it becomes interchangeable depending on what perspective you're viewing it from. So from that perspective, you're never, scientists, whatever observation that people are making from whether they was, you know, 50,000 years ago or, you know, 3,500 BC or 2016, whatever today, whatever time period you're at, you're never going to be able to accumulate everything that is taking place. It's fucking possible. Based on our ability to function the way the human functions. Our brain is, you know, is only smart enough to do, it only has enough power to do but so much. So scientists today, they can't actually go back and accumulate every fucking thing that happened since fucking the Big Bang or 1,000,000 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It's a fucking limit. There are limitations. We have limitations. And one thing that they did point out when they did bring out the aspect of the worship of Amen, that which is hidden and beyond, it's kind of like they were letting you know, like there's limitations that you are not going to be able to go beyond. And so, but every civilization, they're like, well, we're going to push it to the limit. Everybody wants to push it to the limit, but there are still limitations. So I know you were talking about the atoms and, you know, they don't really exist. So in order to push it to the limits, you have to go beyond barriers. You have to go beyond the norm. You have to, you know, make new precedents. So certain things take place, and depending on which, you know, where you stand, it might seem good or bad. But nature is nature, period. It's going to play itself out. And it's kind of like, you know, the Kabbalion or some of the metaphysical texts where they're, you know, evil and good is really, it's a thin line between that. And so whether they were digging people up to learn metal netta, I doubt that. I doubt that those people were digging stuff up to learn metal netta, but that's not to say that people who came after that, when all of that was lost, wouldn't want to do that, because it's the quest. That quest for enlightenment, that quest to go beyond, that's just human nature. That's just, actually, that's an aspect of nature. That aspect, you know, everything is trying to, basically, for the most part, everything is basically trying to reproduce. But us as humans, like, you might have somebody that is, you know, you don't have to reproduce because there's so many humans, but you can live on by, you know, your greatest work. And that's what some of the literature in that spell, the coffin text, is talking about. I think it's coffin text 700, where they keep talking about this homosexual stuff, when he's talking about the buttocks and all of that stuff. But they bringing up the daughters of Benu, and the man who has no son, is basically dealing with memory, because it's all a collective consciousness. And what we're trying to do is recollect what they call in the monotheist religions is that word, period. And so, you know, we got to actually take all that into consideration. But go ahead, Joseph. I think you want to say something, or Chris.
Hey, great point, bro. That's a great point.
I like what you said, brother Kufu. One of the things that kind of reminds me of
Like, I'd have to say that was a really good point.
one of the things that it would kind of it's like you said, you know, Amun, you know, it means you know, that which is hidden. And in some temples, you know, you may see the epithet or the name, you know, Amun Re. The same, like, you know, in some Kabbalistic systems, you may see what you know, some consider small face, or for lack of a better term, Christ-centered. And a lot of times that symbol for that was also the sun. And at the top of that, between Hukmah, which is wisdom, then you have Bina, understanding, and even at the crown Keter, sometimes represent nothingness, you know, and that which is hidden. So it's almost as if, like, you know, the sun ray represents the sun gives life. You know, in darkness you can't see any visible objects around you in the universe, you know, but you know, you're able to comprehend through the use of, you know, your five senses, your tactile senses. You can actually interact and have some type of measurement with reality. But we know that you know, something kind of we spoke about earlier is that we know for a fact that the universe and the world existed prior to us being here, you know, because we obviously live within a agreed upon reality. But that reality that we interpret to be reality may not in actuality be that reality, you know. So again, you know, within, you know, different cultures, different modes of thinking and factors like that, you have to actually take a lot into account before you can actually say, well, this wasn't this and that wasn't that, you know. Because just like in Russia, you know, when it comes to, you know, just for the word arm, they have a single word for the word arm that actually has the hand and part of it. So just like in English, you know, I can say your arm and your hand, they don't have a word like that, you know. The word for arm, you know, they automatically think about your arm and your hand, you know. So different paradigms, different cultures and things like that are going to perceive reality a lot differently. And maybe for their perceived reality, their methods and modes of observation, they can do things systematically and continuously, and it will produce certain results. And it may not be understood by other cultures because they don't have that necessary outlook and perception of the universe, you know what I'm saying? And it doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong or is not. I digress if that's understood. But what Kufu said kind of like how we think about all that.
Let me say this real quick, Consul. Just one point.
Go ahead, bro.
That's you know, that brings us to the aspect or to the ideology that you can't outthink something that doesn't think. You know what I'm saying? If you get into that subtle aspect of what we all emanate from, it doesn't have to think, but we are the result of we thinking. You know what I'm saying? We think. And so thus we think, we try to outthink something that doesn't have to think to exist. We have to think to exist. So, you know, that's like, you know, you can see all these civilizations, like the civilizations, there's some great civilizations in Asia who had great philosophy, you know, in the Buddhist traditions and the Hinduist traditions. I love the South American traditions and some of their ancient cultures and ways that they interpreted nature, from the Nile Valley even to West Africa. But as you can see, it's like it all fails because you can't outthink some shit that does not fucking think. No matter what we think, it's not gonna be it, period. It's gonna fade away. So, you know, us as humans and how we perceive in reality, we try to hold on to these ideologies which we think gives us purpose. But there's so much other shit that exists that doesn't even have a brain. Like plants have perception. You know what I'm saying? They fucking think. Well, we would think they think because of the way they react, but they don't even have a brain. So I know Consu asked earlier, where the hell is the mind at? you know, when we was building in the back chats. So, I mean, our connection to everything, as far as like our atoms, which are 13 point some billion years old, the microbes in our belly, which are like 50 some odd million years old. But, you know, we sit here and we say, oh, you know, I'm 30 some years old, or I'm 20 some years old. And, you know, we associate ourselves with this stream of this narrative that we were given once we were born. But actually, the things that came into being after we were born existed before we were born. And that's when they talk about in the pyramid text, or I think it's the Pertinent Meru, when they talk about coming into being as unformed matter. So, I mean, philosophically speaking, man, it's like, yo, you can have a dialogue all day, but technically, the answer is still going to be wrong. But go ahead, Brother Consul.
Well, yeah, and for those of you who are listening in, you may have just tuned in. You may see the title of the show and say, "Wait a minute, I thought you guys were talking about VODUN. It sounds like you're going into physics." And well, that's what religion is about. That's where science and religion go hand in hand, because we're talking about the atomic and subatomic worlds, these different planes that intertwine because they're one of each other. And then between the sub and subatomic and subatomic and atomic worlds, we have something called perception or thought that is put in a box called mind, because we agreed to call it a mind. Everything that you see out of your cortex, your visual cortex, everything that you see is something you agree to see. That doesn't necessarily mean it is what you see. Those are what would be called the laws of vibration in a metaphysical and allegorical world. That things that seem solid are actually moving, and that's true. Things that you look at that seem to appear to be a solid is because they're moving at a different vibratory rate than you are. So they're going to feel and appear solid. So when we understand these concepts, we start then transposing these truths into different social construct vehicles that power economic structure, social structure, political structure with all tribes of the world. We ignorantly say the white man or the white woman, not knowing that they have tribes. And those tribes are inheritably connected to us. There's only one race being a fiction, is the human race, because race deals with genetics. So there's no black race, white race. There's one race that has gone through descent with modification in light of mutations that you adapt to. And so based on other variables, such as genetic drifts, climatic displacement, and other quantum mechanics of evolution, we evolve and split into different types of humans, but we're all humans. So this is what the supremacists will do. You're this kind of human. You're that kind of human. You're a special kind of human. So now when we start doing that, he transposed that into a religion called God. Well, then if that religion is God, what happens when a human is born with a defect? Is that God's fault? But then at the same voice, you tell me God's perfect. You don't make mistakes. So what happens when children die? Get hit with bullets, die of an illness, never had an opportunity to live. It conflicts with the religious precept in order to put you in a false dichotomy. Because science is science. Energy, nature is going to move forward with or without you or your participation, because you're part of that forward movement, that expansion. So a lot of times your thought and your concepts of your thoughts can limit or raise your level of understanding and awareness, henceforth consciousness. And some of us experience what is called double conscious, where we look at the world through only two aspects. That's ad polarium. That is a logical fallacy. It can't just be one or the other. It has to be quantumization in between what you think are only two major choices, black, white. You got to know there's more to the world than black, white. It's just only black and white people. That's ridiculous. There's only religious and non-religious people. That's not true. You have some that do things religiously, right? So we have to look at those kind of aspects and realize what kind of world we're actually in. And that's why VODUN is an aspect of perception that is used in a religious form, a structured, ordered form that's done repeatedly, religion. You can read a book ardently, or if you got a thesaurus, you may say religiously, or devoutly, or intently. These are all words that are used as semantics in a system of language. And you can change the meaning. If a group of you choose to change the meaning, come on, change it. So that you're not bound by what you've been dictated to or the denotation, because it can take on many connotations depending on the dilution of the culture, the age of the culture, how long the culture goes on, and what's added to the culture over a period of time. The denotation can become many different connotations. The English language, which is Old Middle English, has been corrupted many times. I'm speaking in American. I'm speaking a dialect of English due to the Latin Vulgate and corruption that preceded me because of social and political actions, where the language was adapted under oppression, but the repressed had to form their own means of communication to protect one another. You even had different, more quantumization of languages in things like pidgin language, where these languages are now used for trade between, most of the time, common enemies, but under trade, they dealt with a profit margin. That's economy. See, all of this stuff that maybe you may think is ancient is prevalent to today. There's no difference in it. It's because of the naming, the nomenclature, and what we attest to. We tend to believe that this was something that the ancient times were this special time. If I was studying Kemet, let's say, or the area of VODUN, if I'm studying the area of VODUN and I live in Benin, I'm going to have a totally different aspect than someone who's studying VODUN from America. Because we in America have a whole lot of isms and ideologies that block us from understanding, just as that gentleman or woman would in Benin. But her ideology issues would be a little bit different. They would almost look the same, but be different. Because we are North American displaced Africans, displaced meaning by diaspora. And our diaspora, we came by way of Central and Southern America, not directly from the continent of Africa. A very small percentage of us did that, and they developed into continental tribes such as the Gullah Geechee, the Gurifana. These are people that kept their archaic traditions intact. And then they were then superimposed in America because the Gullah Geechee diet is what we call soul food. But it was spirit food because that soul and that food was from the seed that was planted in the land and prayed to by the Gullah people, thanking Mother Earth, a form of Yoruban culture. And then we ate it as we prayed over it at the table when we ate. That is a Gullah tradition. But you wouldn't know that. You would just think it's something your grandma did. But if your eyes really don't see, and you're only listening to what you've been dictated to because it's in a dictionary, then you're only dealing with the linear points of information and you're not going into the quantumization. But I do, and that segues me to open the floor to understanding that what is the difference, panel, between linear and quantum observation? And I open the floor to that. What is the difference between linear and quantum observation? I yield the floor to the panel.
Peace. I would just say, like, if we go back to some of the old sayings, know thyself. We could get into some of the observations, just dealing with the different languages and how self-prevalent things that we perceive really are, to the point to where we don't really have to utter or think it in its spoken or linguistic format. Like, take for instance a tree. Every different culture, every different language has a word for what a tree is. But take into consideration, if I'm driving down a road, say if I'm driving down a country road, and it's just trees everywhere, I look at a tree, but every time I see a tree, it's not like tree, 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 tree. It's not going off in my head like that. Or when I go into a crowded space, I'm like, okay, I might say, okay, there's a lot of people here. But every time I walk past a person, I don't say person, 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 person. It's self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
Some things are just self-evident. And so when you deal with the ancient motifs, and why a lot of people are mostly attracted to that, there is this mystical aspect of what came before, especially when you push the dates back from your present situation. Because we could just look at it as like even trees, or even just the foods we eat, the fruits and vegetables. The fruits and vegetables that we're eating, and the plants and the flowers that exist now, were totally different a million years ago. They had a whole different structure. They didn't have all the mutations and things of that nature, and they probably had more. It was so closer that you could say it was more pure. Didn't have that many mutations, had more nutrients, um, and things of that nature. So there is this mystical aspect of what came first, because the further you go back, is considered to being closer to the source. You know what I'm saying? If you go beyond all of that, you get closer to the source, and that would be the quantum, the quantum that we're trying to get to. See, everything is trying to emulate that. Everything that exists is trying to emulate that quantum, or that first thing. And I think in Kemet they call it Zeb Tepi, the first time. Everything is trying to emulate that. And in the monotheistic religions, they talk about God creating everything in His image, because that's really the the perfection. You know what I'm saying? If you deal with the first seed that brought all this shit into existence, that's the quantum. Whether you want to talk about seeds in the form of being quarks, or even things below that, coming out of Planck scale, what's below the Planck, shit they can't measure. That's very close to being more pure and more closer to who you truly are. But when you get on this linear thinking, it's kind of like a narrative or a norm, or like you said earlier, a form of agreement. We agree to these things. So yeah, that's basically what I want to say. I want to give the other panel members a chance to answer that question, speak on it.
Yeah, man. Kufu definitely presented some good info there. I like to say, and I think you mentioned it earlier, Kasu. Linear thinking is very, very much based on perspective. A lot of times it's usually when I classify as line of sight. Everything that you have direct access to in the now. You kind of have your own attachment with it. Believe it or not, you already have a certain way that you feel about certain things. Like how you said, how you define certain things or how you understand certain things. With the linear perspective, it almost becomes a piece of you. It has like a connection of you because it's relative. And a lot of times we are relative thinkers when it comes to things that we have access to, but when there's things such as the ancients, that is not necessarily that direct line of sight, which is why we fantasize about it and romanticize it, because there is no direct connection. There's no from point A to point B connection. And with quantum thinking, you're able to see, okay, maybe not from a direct point of view, but maybe from a different angle, or maybe from various ways of viewing, this particular thing. Or the ancients, for example, you find the connection. And I think when we think linearly, we're limiting ourselves to things from both cultural perspectives, historical perspective, and scientific perspectives, because everything is relatable. This is why religion, the modern Abrahamic religions today, are very, very effective. It's because they make everything linear. So you're able to, even if it doesn't exist, in a natural form, you're told it exists. So you're making, with your mind, you're making it exist. You're causing something to attach to you, and this is why a lot of people take it personal.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more quick thing. And I know Kansu brought up the atoms, that the atoms are almost not even here. I think the atom is like a sign from, you know, that point beyond what we can remember or what we can quantify to let you know that, once, because it's 99.99 whatever percent empty space. And so it's kind of letting you know, once you go here, it's totally not perfect. And the only other way that you can have an aspect of perfection is with the mind, because the mind um, can be formed to hold certain ideologies and certain concepts and perceptions based on reality. But the mind has the ability to go beyond that. You know what I'm saying? We see it all the time with science. We see it all the time with changes in cultures and shifts in consciousness. So the mind is like really the closest thing that we have that can actually take us back or go beyond imperfection into a state of perfection. That's, you know, that's the as above, so below.
Definitely, I would say that the mind is God. It's limitless in its thinking ability. You know,
Agreed. Let me say this real quick, and I'll be right back. About the whole linear thing. It works in a certain degree of when trying to keep certain, I guess, records, but at the same time, it's this is the fault for me is that anything that you call the past can only be recalled by memory. We know memory cannot always be reliable. We know sometimes that you can also implant false memory. Um, but that the moment right now, me being aware of the moment right now, I mean, it is what it is. If I'm 100% focused, I'm saying I'm aware of every moment. If I'm not distracted. The thing about the future too is that the future can only be imagined. Until what you imagine that date actually comes to that. So linear thinking itself to me, it's actually strange when I actually sit there and ponder about it, and I find it unique the fact that in ancient Kemet, again, what I'm saying, like, we only reference this for its place within African tradition and academia across the world, but even in ancient Egypt, they saw the limitations of that. They were linear to a degree, but also they were not, which is why they saw every day actually beginning a new day. Just like anytime a new heir sat on the throne of the two lands, that new heir, that new reign would be considered the first day. So they didn't have like Jehudi Ma'at was became king in 32.5 BCE. You know what I mean? It was the first day. Literally, like, time itself began that first day. So, from an African perspective, and it's not even just African. I think it's actually it's just humans in general. We're all African. It's just humans. But I think it's more a linear thinking. I don't believe it's natural, and I try to make sense the best way that I could. You know what I mean? So.
Hey, real quick, you brought up memories, and they can't be relied on. I know when I was in college, I had this, one of my courses I had to take was British literature, and there was a author or a poetic author called Williams Wordsworth, and we had to study some of his poetry. And one of the things that he would talk about is recollection and tranquility. A lot of people should look that up. Just Google it, recollection and tranquility. And what he was basically talking about is, you know, when you become in a state of happiness and, you know, you become ecstatic, the possibility of recollecting things in tranquility brings about a potential to perceive things that go beyond what you already know. And, you know, there's philosophies on that, you know, with the Buddhism and, you know, awakening, the awakened state, or achieving nirvana. And a lot of other cultures talk about that. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that on there. And, you know, a lot of people, you know, we shouldn't get caught up in, you know, a lot of this Afrocentric thinking, because we try to blend in when we do that. But the purpose should be to blend out, to, you know, study a lot of different things, because there's a lot of keys and a lot of jewels in places that you wouldn't even imagine. So just check that out, that recollection and tranquility, and compare that to, you know, a lot of other things, and see if that allows you to become in a state in which you could have what, you know, a lot of, you know, the Catholic Church practice after Christmas. I think it's the first week of January, they have the Feast of the Epiphany. You know what I'm saying? You got to put yourself in a state to where that, you know, you could, you know, have an epiphany. And when we talk about the voodoo, you know, systems, everybody has their own way of doing things, their own modus operandi. So, you know, Michael Jordan, we would say he was doing voodoo. And if this is an ancient culture, he would be deified as a god. He basically already is, kind of like, in a sense, but everybody has their way of doing things. And just using Michael Jordan as an example, you know, Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. Nobody could do the Michael Jordan. But it looks like he's doing it, and he's a human, and I can do it, but no one has yet been able to do his voodoo. So I digress on that point. Peace.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way to look at that.
Our brother Haru, I know you've been sending back. I'm sure I know you want to add to the collection.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, when it comes to dealing with certain aspects of history, I personally think that we can only deal linearly, because we're not living in that time. You know, we are not those people. Especially, you know, like we were using Kemet for example, but you know, this is 1,000 years plus. I mean, there's no way we can fathom what was really going on 5,000 years ago, because we don't think like those people do. We don't have the same technology those people had. So of course, I don't think that we don't think like them or think like they did. So it's kind of hard to interpret what was actually going on 5,000 years ago if we're not within that culture. So, you know, in some aspects, that's why I say linear is the only way we can look at it. You know, and I just wanted to add that piece to that.
Yeah, and I think linear thought is very important. I think it is, you know, fundamentally important. But when we're looking at it from a holistic aspect, once again, if one is a critical thinker, a critical reader, who created time? Who created the definition of time? Who created the rules of time? Who said it was ancient and long ago? And these things, because when we start looking at the holistic aspects of it, this is a continuum. The universe doesn't expand with a clock. It's just static movement. And it's a different type of movement. We just use the term movement for relativity to understand from our atmosphere and our perspective. But the universe has a movement of its own that is unique in outer space. Movement in outer space is unique to what movement is on Earth. So when we look at our history and tapping into our ancient history, we are literally tapping into our memories that make it history. Now, the study of history could be the scientific observation of data left behind in order to create an empirical observation of that certain situation or point in time. So this is why we take on cultural norms and beliefs, like taking pictures, like the photo Haile Selassie you see behind me, the photo of Malcolm X on his pyramids to Hajj. Well, that's time traveling. So we're taking a picture in time and suspending it so that we can always access our Akashic records. The Akashic records are believed to be a religious text. It was not. It was talking about memory banks. When we talk about the hippocampus region, or what's called the almond's horns in the human brain, there are two hippocampi, one on the right, one on the left, that look like horns. And those horns are indicative of the horns that we see on Baphomet, the horns that we see on Amun-Ra, specifically during the Ptolemaic period, where you will see a human's head with horns. If you see the Egyptian headdress on each side of the ear, you will see horns. Those are the hippocampi representing memory, because in the hippocampus region, it is responsible for memory. So the study of the human body physically was well advanced way back in 3100 BC. We tend to forget that it's very rare that something really changes drastically in the world of anthropology, because anthropology is a subset of evolution, and evolution is the smallest change over a very long period of time. Some people who don't understand that try to call it irreducible complexity. And that same vision of irreducible complexity sometimes is brought into knowledge and information, because knowledge, understanding, and wisdom must be taken in that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, must be taken in that order, because that is the process of maintaining logic and the ability to reason with yourself without being influenced of outside sources. Because now we're dealing with this person's opinion and this person's opinion. Okay, well, this person said this, but where did they get it from? Or where did he get it from? You'll be going down a rabbit hole looking for an answer, because we are not tapped into those Akashic records of those particular individuals, the memories and dates and times. This is why we use diaries, journals, essays, peer reviews. As people experience things, they write them down to preserve them. That is an Asian methodology. The Asians started writing on the walls, and they kept things that way. And they got that from the scribes in Kemet, the Nile Valley. But they got that from the stories that were expressed in the coffin text and literature by means of Southern Sub-Saharan Africans and Western Africans who used the voice as a means of record keeping, because they would tell stories, the griot, the babalao, the Ike. So these things are the same soup in a different bowl. So you have to take into account, it's just like Americans. We have, for some reason, particularly in the conscious community, we don't like studying America. I've noticed that Black people in the conscious community do not like studying America. They don't like studying Central America or South America. They go straight to Africa. I got to go to Africa. Not realizing that Africa is here as well. The Americas, there are 3 Americas, not just one. So the European labeled them Northern, Central, and South America. These are the Americas that were populated by diasporatic Africans. How can you sit here and believe in a DNA test? It comes back and tells you you're Benin, and think that your ancestors came across that water directly to where you at. The slave master, and I use that term loosely, very loosely, did not pick and choose who was going to be sitting on the boat with who. Now here comes logic, right? So that's the same way the VODUN culture was infiltrated in every other culture we created. Because they didn't go, are y'all the Jeffersons? Well, let's make sure we keep the Jeffersons together as we breed them. Families were crossbred for production purposes. They looked at the stock of one group and looked at the stock of another group and said, if we breed them like dogs and domesticated animals, this is the byproduct we're going to get. It is permeating the food we eat. We eat lettuce. Lettuce is from Egypt. It's not from here. This is a modified form, a genetically modified form, a hybrid form of lettuce that came from Egypt. People look at camels and think camels are from Africa. No, they're not. They're from the region in Canada, and they look like a rabbit when they first started, before they evolved into the camel of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can't stick on what we're being dictated to if we don't know how to properly research and assess information without being emotionally bombarded. So don't just, and that's why this is important with studying religions. What does the religion mean to the culture, not to the defined meaning? You have to be a peripheral journalist and a forensic researcher to get proper primary data. Because the most we can be are enthusiasts, unless we're like brothers like Anthony Browder, who actually have the tools and are out there digging and excavating and actually dealing with cultures direct on and interviewing cultures. We did a show a while back about the proper elements and tools needed in research, where you need to interview the people. That's one of the first steps, is to interview the modern people and find out their science, their stories, and how they passed on their science information. Because science is observational study. And the continental peoples did scientific things. It may look foreign to you because the methodology might not involve a microscope or a test tube, or they may not have on a white jacket. That's all propaganda. That is a methodology that is in a different cultural aspect. So do you actually think that the continental scientists of their time was going around with lab jackets and cracking open the bone marrow because they needed to? No, but they were scientists.
Yeah, they definitely were scientists. And you
Go
brought
ahead,
up the canoptic. You brought the canoptic jars up earlier. I mean, before they actually was like, we're gonna put these organs in a canoptic jar from this pharaoh or this important person, they definitely had to perform autopsies. And I think Imhotep was it's documented that he even performed autopsies.
Yes.
So when we get into this memory thing, and this ideal of linear or quantified thinking, what about the first person who thought about making a chair? All right, we don't know the first person who thought about making a chair, but we sitting in a chair right now to this day, probably due to the fact that this person actually made a chair, and that audio spread on through humanity. Or the first person that actually decided to make paper. I mean, paper is a big commodity to this day. So, even the city that we live in, the streets that were made, the buildings that were made, the objects that we buy in the stores, a lot of these people who actually invented these things and created these things are dead. So is their mind still existing within that object? But even though we don't associate the object with a physical person, it has to be some aspect of their mind still there, for the simple fact that it's still carrying on. So that's so that poses my second question. I'll make my second point. What time are we really living in right now? Everything that is physically made in an object from humans, and if they're all dead, but we're still, interacting with these things, what time is it? Is it the afterlife, or is it the before life, or is it the past, present, or the future? Because based on where we're at, we're in the present, we're thinking that these people died in the past, but we're still, you know, basically interacting with aspects of their thought process.
That's right.
So
And it's powerful you say that, brother. In VODUN and Ifa, the purpose of VODUN and Ifa is for the individual to fix the problems that the ancestors before them created. If you have, and to study your ancestors to find out what chronic behavioral problems are limiting your bloodline. So once you discover self through divination, you then go on a path of correcting your ancestors' mistakes. So that as you become and transcend into ancestorship, you leave solutions. That's African culture, is to lead by solutions, because we have chronic issues of ancestorship affecting us to this day. We got behavioral problems that we inherited, and our ancestors did not fix them. So as you move on, the ancestor concept is that the ancestors need you to change and right the wrong as a living perpendicular, a living entity. It's your spirit going through a living experience so that it does not have to come back in the decrepit form. When it's resurrected again, i.e. Osiris, Heru, it is pristine and perfect. In Christianity, they call it Lucifer, the son of God, the most beautiful angel in all the world.
Hey, Kansu, you hit it. You talk about this ancestor worship, and yes. I was just talking about the memory of dead people that, you know, we still interacting with their ideas and concepts, but our physical bodies are the result of the first human.
Yes, sir.
But the first human had an ancestor too.
Yes. A quantumized.
Hey, Khufu, they're not gonna get that, yo. They're not gonna get that.
Again, that's what power is. We have no choice but to put it out there. But are you ready to receive it? I don't know. At one point, we were space. What you define as space, because you need mass, time, distance, and velocity to even encompass what space and time is. Because we are everything. We are all of this. There's nothing spooky about it. And so when Khufu made references to atoms and molecules that are thousands of years old, but you say I'm 25. That's according to your indoctrination of perception that you gave reality to.
Hey, Kansu, and it goes with all that too. And this is what's crazy, right? Think about this. Your measure of reality, your external reality, besides what you see in the visual cortex, but your actual interactional reality is produced by what? Your five senses, you know? I can hear it, I can smell it, I can taste it, I can touch it, you know what I mean? On my tactile senses, I can feel it. Any observation of the universe was done by what? A man. You know, any creation of an instrument was created by man. Any man using that instrument to observe reality, it's still being observed by the lens of who? Man. So the only thing that truly does exist is the mind of man, at least to the degree that we exist of who we are as Homo sapiens sapiens, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, that goes to like, you know, what Khufu was saying, you know, the first individual to, can, you know, who could control fire, you know, the first ones to make certain tools, you know, writing, you know, painting, making a chair, you know, building, you know, the first house structures and things like that, you know. Those things, I mean, they're so ancient, it's literally built within our memory, our, you know, our DNA of who we are, you know. So
well, this is why I have a fundamental issue. I remember a while back, Anka Keck made a statement that I disagreed with, that the continental people of Africa, they need books. They've been building and doing shit you could only dream of without a book. They were already building houses and understood science and understood the science of the womb and the human body way before any goddamn book. Books are modern interpretations of thought. Books are thought put on paper. Don't you got to think before you write? Didn't man come before words? It's quite logical. Sometimes some people are so intelligent, they're ignorant. This is how the continental African would look at you. Like, you're so intelligent, you're stupid. Because the European depends on intelligence, intel, information, gathered it from somewhere else instead of going into thyself. Knowledge of self, knowledge, gnosis. So that's why I say the more you become pro-black, the more European you become. Because only somebody ignorant would think only black without any effort or existence of spirituality. You would think that you exist just on facts. Facts? A scientist don't have the answer to everything. Who told you there's nothing absolute in the planet? But we deal in facts. Like, you're going to take a book and go over to the Fulani to teach them what? The book is going to teach them how to be employed in that system of that needs books. But when we start talking about VODUN, when we start talking about spiritual systems, it is the essence of mankind. Not just man, mankind. Man is the first being. Then you have mankind. That particular nomenclature is indicative to a certain group of people, man and mankind, the European. That's what this game of, man, you talking like the white man. You using the white man knowledge. Yeah, you are. If that's all you're arguing your point based on. Because every reference that you pull out of a book is going to be a European's rendition. Or a black person that took on European methodology to be able to write in that book. I love Dr. Ben, but he had to learn the European system of research. And he wrote like a European in a European formatted book. So that ain't original.
You could almost say he wrote it for Europeans.
That might hurt their feelings, Melvin. Go ahead, bro.
I said you can almost say Dr. Ben wrote it for Europeans.
In blackface.
Exactly.
Hey, but yeah, because the first human didn't say I'm black. He didn't say I'm a Moor. He just knew he existed.
And
that's what I tell people. You're like, this race thing, it's gotta go. It's gotta go.
That's trying to survive. They didn't give a fuck about none of this other stuff. All they was doing was hunting to get food and pass on their genes to the next generation. That's all they was concerned about.
You show up with a book and it might get burned for fire, or they might break weed on it. You know? You're not gonna read it. Come on now.
It's so powerful, man. You know, Brother Kufu says something so deep. The tree is one of the most powerful icons in most tribes around the world because the tree means ancestry. You have certain cultures that will hug a tree, go talk to a tree, pray, put the negative energy into a tree so that the tree can disperse that energy and bring forth positive energy from it. Like trees are very important. The European calls it Wicca and witchcraft, and they go and get wands made of wood and holy wood called Hollywood. Those are games, man. So when you study African culture, you really have to detach yourself from a European-centered mind. You really, really, really have to literally detach from everything that is a convenience to you. We live in an element of convenience when it comes to our culture being robbed from us. Go ahead, Brother Harold.
That's all it is. Because like I'm gonna go back to the point you just made. If I take my European self, you know what I'm saying, my European thinking self over to Africa, and I encounter a certain ethnic group whose main thing is surviving, and I go over there to them with a book, they're gonna look at me crazy like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? This ain't gonna put no food in my mouth. You know what I'm saying? This ain't gonna help me take care of my home. What am I gonna do with this? All they're concerned about with is surviving. That's all they're concerned with.
That's right.
I mean, they can really care less about a book. So, you know, just like you were saying, we just got to take ourselves out of that paradigm when we're studying different cultures. Because if I go over to a Fulani brother or sister with a damn book, and they worried about trekking across the Sahara to find water, what the hell is that book gonna do for them? It's a thing of convenience for us, but for them, that shit, it don't mean nothing. It don't mean a damn thing at all. You know, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I would say books is for people that lost their damn mind.
Oh shit!
Only in the sense of
right,
the spirit
right.
of the first humans. Like, yo, you thinking about this shit? Really? What the fuck? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but that shows you just how European. That shows you just how Europeanized many of us are that think that way. We think that they need a book, need proper identification, you know, things like that that are European constructed. Like, and that shows you, like you said, Carlos, to be pro-black is to be European, because you're not African by thinking that way. You're not operating like one.
One quick point. You could just look at languages. People go back and say, okay, you could look at the click sound. You ain't never seen no book written in clicks. And then all the other languages that spawned out of that. They wasn't writing it down like, oh, we gotta make a new language. Let me write these clicks down so I can come up with another language. Yo, niggas was freestyling. Yo, every nigga was like a Jay-Z. Niggas was just freestyling their way to the top.
Checkmate.
Period.
Checkmate. And don't get an audience, you know, family, please don't misunderstand what we're saying here. What we're saying is books are very important. They are, if your mind is conditioned to read it. If you're not reading it with a religious or spurious mind, then your perception will be altered with the simple words that in front of you. You'll be reading words and you will literally create definitions out of your psychosis and your neurotic state. You are not, because you're not centered in what you're reading. I'll go ahead, Brother Haru.
Nah, you know what? You kind of touched on a little bit of what I was gonna say. You know, I was gonna make sure that the viewership understood that we weren't saying that they aren't important, because at the end of the day, you know, obtaining knowledge is definitely important. You know, that should be one of your goals to the day you die, no matter what culture you is, just to attain knowledge, to become an elder, you know, to get that ancestry under your belt. That's for sure. So we're not saying that it's not important, but the thing is, you'd have to be able to detach yourself from your reality to understand someone else's reality. And books may be important to us in the paradigm that we live in, but all over the world is not the same. You know, everyone that exists on the planet as of right now has a different way that they're trying to survive from their perspective. Some things mean more things to others. Like for us here living in America, in most places, water it's available to us. You know, there's no real big crisis on us getting any, even in places that don't really have any water. We still have the means to obtain water. But I mean, certain parts of the globe, they're not that lucky. I brought up that Fulani just a few minutes ago for a reason, because there is a specific group of Fulani women who trek the Sahara Desert. It's like a rites of passage for them, and they have to go so far away from their settlement to trek across the almost the entire Sahara to get to an oasis where there's water for them. You know, that's a rites of, that's a rites of passage, but at the same time, that's a means of their survival, because this is their main source of water. So you gotta understand from different perspectives or different cultures what means what to who. You know, that's, I think me saying it like that, we can kind of understand where we're coming from, you know, with our with what we're talking about. And I yield the floor back to you, Constance.
Yeah, I mean, quick point. Just imagine, say, walking in a social group with no clothes on, just socializing with a social group with no clothes on. I mean, you basically, from, you know, this Western perspective, you feel ashamed of that. Tribes are, you know, in certain parts of the world where that's a norm. But even if you were to walk naked amongst that tribe, you would kind of still feel some type of shamefulness. And so, you know, just thinking from a perspective of those who would be able to, you know, when people lived in that culture and that was pretty much a norm, just think about it. Your neurons are firing off, you know, different, your synapses were different. It's a different feeling because, you know, this modern Western world is very shameful. And, and that's a
Devil's playground.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
I want to add to that. I want to add to that too.
Kufu was snapping, man.
Yeah, he definitely going in, man. I'm about to call Sprint and tell him to replace my phone because it's getting too hot. But I definitely want to add to that point.
You need water cooler.
Now I want to add to that point he was making. Like he's 100% correct. Some cultures are perfectly fine with walking around with no clothes on. You know, there are certain ethnic groups in South America, certain ethnic groups in Africa, India, you know, Polynesia. These people walk around almost completely naked. It's normal for them. They don't have the corrupted minds that we have. They're not thinking about sex. It's just normal. You know, that does not get them worked up like, say, it would get one of us worked up. We go to a strip club, we see naked women, we're excited. But for them, that's normal. That doesn't bother them at all. So just like he's saying, it's a cultural thing. For us, being naked, yes, we're ashamed because we have highly European minds. And that's just how we think. You can go ahead and finish up, Kufu.
Nah, I'm done. I'm good.
You know, I was going to expound on one thing that's a facet in the conscious community, and we, from time to time, may engage in it, but we also are conscious of what we're engaging in, and that is the art of debating. When we talk about topics like this that are highly controversial, that we would need different people in a hangout like this. We would love for those that beg to differ, or if you have an issue, if you're in the back chat now and you want to discuss this, you may say, hey, you guys are crazy, this is this. It's healthy, but know what you're doing. Debating is an Athenian construct from Greece. You will not find, and I challenge, put a public challenge out there. You won't find any literature or remnants of debate from the Fulani or any other African tribes in Western Africa, sub-Saharan. We didn't have a need to debate because we were at a different conscious level. We knew that if you debated, ultimately you're going to fight. Now you look around the conscious community to see what's going on and see why that don't even fit in the African construct. You're not going to find any remnants outside of Athenia, Greece. you're not going to find any ancient 3100 BC, 4000 BC of people debating. But go ahead. I think, Brother Melvin, I think you wanted to add to that.
No, I was gonna agree with you. You know, if you had the even simple arguments, you know, somebody, you know, would have fought, and eventually somebody would have died. So, you know, if you could imagine dating, it would be pretty hectic because you wouldn't be able to walk away from there saying you whipped somebody's ass intellectually.
Right. You can't call a person a bitch intellectually. A bitch is a bitch, right? You can't use that excuse. Well, I'm gang banging intellectually. No, disrespect is disrespect because the continental African knew the power of the word. The spoken word was a gift and it was sacred. Most of the time, you didn't speak on things that were not revered because the speaking on the linguistical system was very modern. From the advent of symbols that were then labeled alpha betas. And and they got it from an Etruscan system. And that Etruscan system comes from the historiological depiction of the Punic era, the Punic Wars. So if we dealt with the history books, that's fine, but we're not getting into the quantumization of the tribes that encompass these so-called people. You could call a person a Phoenician like Moses was a Phoenician in biblical history, but Phoenicia don't even exist nowhere on the map. That's a slang. Man, that go to dragons. Look at them. Nice. The dragons over there. So the Phoenicians, well, that was a biblical nomen. That was a biblical naming. But the Phoenicians actually were your Etruscans, eventually your Etruscans, that were along the Mediterranean Sea coastline. They were naval people, fishermen. They dealt in import and export. So they had a certain level of control in their area. And the Greeks looked to them for influence. Just cultural shit. Now we get into the debate of the names, date, time, chronological order. That's cool, but you realize that the goddamn Greeks and Romans was worried about calendars and dates and shit, right? It's called the Gregorian calendar. You know, they did that. It wasn't no need for me to argue like, what fucking time is it though? Let me write that down. Okay, let me write this shit down. We didn't have that motivation. So if you so black powered up, you would not need those things to come to a conclusion. So we got to take that into account, ladies and gentlemen, when you're using kings and queens, gods and goddesses. I want to try to be correct as possible. Some people get upset being called a Gentile.
Damn.
Let me clear that up. Go ahead, Haru. I'm sorry.
No, I was about to say, not even just the Black Power community, because in general, you know, I think we're all concerned about dates and times, but you already hit the nail on the head. We're concerned from a Roman perspective. I like to bring up a small point. Let's just say our brothers that deal with the Hebrew faith.
Mm-hmm.
When they go off of dates, they're going off of dates on a Gregorian or Roman calendar. I mean, I don't see them going off of dates in from a Hebrew perspective. You know? So I mean, it's not just, you know what I'm saying, us in this particular community, you know, it's a little bit of everybody, because it seems like everybody's going off of dates from a Roman perspective, just period.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's the kind of system that we operating off of, period.
Go ahead, Melvin. Wow.
Yeah, let's call it shots. Let's call it shots.
You know, and again,
research up. Step your research up.
I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Everyone has their own faiths. I mean, in the conscious community, there's always argument about religion. And that's what prompted us to do this particular broadcast, because we're superimposing religion over science as if there's a separation there. Science is indicative to their culture. Everyone has their own form of science. When we talk about VODUN and Ifa in Asia, the one particular Asian, Chinese, they call it I Ching. It's the same divination system. And so, or the Tao Te Ching, the writings of the I Ching. So there's different cultural perceptions of the same information. It's not anything different. When we talk about the Hebrew, may talk about the crown, the sephir, and dealing with the crown, the formation of the crown, the yitzhak in Hebrew. Well, you could say the crown in Ifa, and the crown represents the mind, and that crown coming over your head, and you being coronated as a king because of your crown. So in the physical aspect, the crown is given. You see the white and red crown worn by Narmer and Kemet. Those are examples of high enlightenment, because the crown represents your mind or aura. You even have certain symbols in Christianity that allude to the mind, which is the crown with the cross going through it, representing the consciousness and the mind, and the physical, the cross representing the spine. All these are allegorical terms to give you logic. Because if I really believed that a man was living in a well for 3 days, then I would be questioned scientifically. What do you mean? Well, it's symbolic and it's allegorical mentally, to a deeper meaning. Mentally. Right. They would be like, well, something's not right here because you're mentally, physically, that's an impossible thing to do. So evidently, this book also has periods when it is inspirational through allegorical terms in order to make sense of it, for it to maintain its logic, because there are good aspects in it and then there are bad aspects. There's a false intent, in my opinion, because everybody's not going to agree with me, but that it's a slave book because again, they think that's the only book of that caliber. But the slave master took an original script and catered it to his own paradigm, his or her own paradigm. That's all. If you had the ability to control what books are published, you're going to put yourself in there too. So there's same depictions of what a Bible is in many different cultural aspects. And this is why in the system of liberation, due to white supremacy, we get sidetracked by racism and bigotry that was created by the supremacists in the first place. Because the first thing supremacists did was give you a choice of two evils so that you could perpetually fight between each other over frivolous shit while I keep being supreme over you. Because the true supremacists come in all shapes, sizes, shades of color, and all of that. When you're sitting with the elite group of people, they're not concerned with what color and shape you are. They're beyond that. Look at the inner racism within our own culture. Our people say, well, black people cannot be racist. Yes, we can. We have light-skinned black people that are racist against dark-skinned black people. We got Baptists that are racist against Catholics, but we all black. Look at the racism in the conscious community. How you gonna tell me racism can't exist, but we practice racism and bigotry against each other in this community? That's linear thought. That's what linear thought will get you. Because the more you try to be a revolutionary being in blackness, you looking more and more European to me.
Facts.
I mean, I can't describe. I don't know, panel. I can't tell the difference anymore between a Klan member and a Black Panther. I don't see the difference. It's
yeah, the only difference you'll be able to see is that one has better artillery than the other.
Woo! It makes you wonder You know, people ask questions on, well, then what are the solutions, Team Osiris? Kansu, what's up? What do we got to do to fix this? Fix your damn self. Slow down. Let the world move at the pace it's moving, but slow yourself down and say, what's wrong with me? And once you do that, that's that first step. Because now, as a descendant, it is your job to protect all of your descendants and fellow descendants, because we are ancestors in the making. As African-centeredness, we don't deal with worldly things. We operate in a world that is structured and designed under the auspicity of commerce. However, we are spiritual sentient beings. Now, because we have these namings or nomenclature that seems to dictate to us, do this and do that, and you're this, and go over there and turn around, sit down, shut up, jump, fall, roll, crawl, obey. Because we have these things that are given to us in a dictative form, we just accept it because it's a norm and a belief. It's a norm and a belief system. You know, and I'll say this over and over again because I want the listeners to get this. Elements of culture, there are 8 elements. Symbols, and in this order, specifically, symbols, language, values, beliefs, norms, behavioral patterns, artifacts, and then social institutions. And those social institutions, we go backwards now. Once the social institutions, what are social institutions? Well, there are patterns of organization and relationships regarding governance, production, socializing, education, knowledge, creation, arts, and relating to other cultures. That's your social institution. That is the last element when a culture is formed. Once those things are formed, you start working backward. You start looking for artifacts to find out your history. You start going into the behavioral patterns based on the artifacts you found, archaeology. You start going into norms like morals and folkways. That's routine casual intervention with each other, interaction with each other, rules and expectations by each society, right? Then you go into beliefs, which are specific statements that people hold to be true. Then you go and study the value of those beliefs, because the value had to come first before the belief. Then you go into the language that created the values, because that language is a system of symbols that allow people to communicate in the first place. And to get the origin of that language, you go to that symbol. That symbol carries a particular meaning recognized by people who share the same culture. Those 8 elements every single time are going to give you an understanding of a specific culture. These social institutions and the byproducts of the social institution is what permeates everything we do in our lives. We socialize, and how we socialize affects this, because this creates this and all around you, your perception of the world. And how you socialize alters your perception. We are having a social exchange through a social vehicle called the internet. That is a social platform. And we're talking about norms, beliefs, values, symbols, languages. We're talking about all of that stuff. Okay, and the brother just asked me to reiterate, forgive me, panel, but I just saw in the back chat, he wanted me to reiterate those 8. In this order, brother, there's symbols, this is 1, language, values, beliefs, norms, behavioral patterns, artifacts, and last but definitely not least, the most important, social institutions. When you understand those 8 and you work backwards from 8 to 1. So let me give you the definitive connotations of each one. Symbols are anything that carries meaning, that are recognized by people who share the same culture, like a meta netter, like a totem pole by a Native American. Okay? Then you have language. That's the system of symbols that allow people to communicate with one another, because the symbols gave birth to the language. Okay? After symbols have been established and language is established, now that language is going to carry value. We have a language system now. We carry value by means of dictionaries because we were oppressed and we took on that particular methodology. But even before the oppression, that action was being done. The oppressor learned from our ancestors, when oppressing them. So we take on a value system, and that's culturally defined. I stress this, culturally defined standards. That means that it's not a damn dictionary. It's a dictionary of the culture. So find out the nomenclature and the value system of the culture you're studying or the culture you adopt. And those culturally defined standards are desirability, goodness, beauty, many other things that serves as broad guidelines for social living. All right? That's the value. Well, we got symbols and language that have developed, and the language has created a value system. So what are you going to need? A belief system. That's specific statements that people hold to be true based on their usage of their particular value, language, and symbol system. Once those beliefs established, you go into norms, and we start talking about mores and folkways. Mores are norms that are widely observed and have a great moral significance. Let's just say a more would be, it is customary to bow before a woman. Folkways are norms for casual interaction. Waving, waking up, how you bathe. So norms are rules and expectations by which your society guides the behavior of its members, because the belief system is going to have to become a norm. And once the norm is established, guess what? Because it's rules and expectations by which society guides the behavior of its members, you're going to have behavioral patterns. And that's the typical manner in which people perform production, whether it's manual, manufactured, automated, in different degrees. When you start to communicate, the language content, technology choices, things like that, or technology choices that I would say, I want to correct that. Or you're marking significant events, rituals that endorse values and punctuating steps in your life, a graduation, a prom, a baptismal. That affects your behavioral patterns. Basic needs, dwelling, feeding, security, sex. These are all behavioral patterns that have developed because you have been subject to symbols, language, values, beliefs, and norms. Now you have artifacts, because if you've been subject to symbols, language, values, beliefs, and norms and behavioral patterns, this is going over a period of time. Things have developed now. You're going to leave artifacts, which are distinct material objects, such as architecture, technologies, artistic creations. This is what archaeologists and biologists look for when they're studying you and with me and everyone else and themselves. This is where biasness can come in when exhuming artifacts. And like I said, social institutions, where you socialize, whether it be education, knowledge creation. Knowledge creation is your church. That's why it's called the Church of Knowledge Creation. You're going to find out the knowledge of how you were created. The arts, like music, painting, things of that nature. All of this stuff is relative to culture. So once you encompass that, you work your way backwards to find out the actual origin of that culture. So forgive me for being wordy, but I wanted to be clear since you wanted to know that. Okay? That's real important.
That was powerful.
And it's real important that we know that, man. Because you got to have a sound logic mind before you start playing these Monopoly games with these clowns out here. Talking this stupid shit. That's why certain ideologies were attacked. The talented 10th. They gonna say the shit because you sound like a goddamn robot, depending on books all the goddamn time. They gonna say, well, we getting hit with whips and shit, bro. You come with a goddamn college book talking about we gonna whoop this slave master ass with a couple of these pages. But he ain't picked up a book yet on your ass. He won't even allow you to see him read. He won't even allow you to see him read. He read in his private quarters. And he have his wife and his mammy.
Damn, I gotta call Sprint.
What'd you say, King?
Damn, I gotta call Sprint, man. My shit just burnt out. Damn.
When you go to the plantation in Northern America, the graveyard was in back of the house. And the other graveyard was in the farm a few acres away. That was for the slaves. But the family that was in that plantation house where the wife and the mammy lived, because the wife was usually the brother, the sister, or a distant cousin of the male that was at the plantation. So what they would do was bring the mammy in to breastfeed and clean the house, because they wanted to make sure that those slaves' blood was intertwined with theirs to maintain that family. That mammy, some of us called her Aunt Jemima. And she would breastfeed the youth because the sister wouldn't do it. The mammy would. And they would only bury their relatives close to them. Think about this. Show you how indoctrinated in Europe we are. When you bury your loved ones, do you realize how far you bury your loved ones away from you? So when you go into meditation or you want to draw on a memory of your ancestor, how you going to do that and they so far away from you? You ever wonder why Kemet, the ancestors was right there by them? Because they could always access that memory. Do you see how we've been indoctrinated and don't even fucking know it? But we talk about this pro-black shit. I'm guilty of it. This is why I got to correct my ancestors' mistake, because they taught me this shit. My ancestors are in a cemetery 30 minutes away from me. They should be on my land where I live. The slave master learned that from the Africans he stole, because he watched them. He said, damn, they bury their dead right next to them. They walking right over their dead. In Louisiana, Bastille Day, they celebrating death in the graveyard, because they know death that's afterlife. That's an extension. So they would go and they would cook and they would laugh and they would dance in the graveyard. And Papa Legua would be the mask of the skeleton. That's the ancestor. The cross on the top hat, that's higher consciousness. That's Christ consciousness. That's small face. That's why it's a top hat. It represents the crown. All of this stuff is African culture, y'all. Get in tune. Ask yourself. Go ahead, King. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can imagine how pissed off your ancestors are to be buried by somebody that they probably hated. That's beef right there,
bro.
Hey Mel, you know it's crazy. Let me say something too.
Go ahead, King.
We all know about genetically. We all may come from the African continent, but genetically, we do have differences amongst us, you know? Mm-hmm. And one of the aspects I think that is, I guess kind of, let me get back to my train of thought. One of the aspects, again, like we have all these genetic differences amongst each other.
Oh, we lost Chris. He'll be back, I'm sure. He's about to go in. But everybody, you think about these norms and beliefs that you've adopted. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, you got to think about it. You got your ancestors buried with other people that they probably didn't even get along with.
Didn't even know. They're sitting in plots.
Yeah.
And let's get it twisted. Don't get it twisted, y'all. We're not talking about ancestors that are consciously walking around in some ancestor world. We're talking about the disconnect of the memory that you need to maintain with your loved ones. Because if you stop thinking about them, they don't exist anymore. So it's nothing spooky. We're not talking about they walking in astral bodies and shit. We ain't talking about that. That's sensationalism. If that's what you need to make you feel better, then rock on. If you need to act like you just saw your deceased father walking up some steps, if that make you feel better, but you know it's just psychosis, you just psyching yourself up.
That's that linear thinking.
Right, that's that shit. That's that worldly thought. But if you realize that the ancestors are your astral body, your ancestors exist through your blood. Your blood is living testament that the ancestors live. Your blood. The atoms and capillaries in your blood are the DNA of your ancestors. They shared the same blood. And you pass it on. Because the DNA is just a grid. What activates the DNA is the blood. That's why the connecting jars were kept separate, because each organ was vital to the movement and purity of your blood inside the body. The body has 12 systems. It's not a coincidence that those 12 systems allude to 12 disciples. It's not a coincidence that the 12 disciples allude to the 12 cranial nerves at the base of the skull. It's not the coincidence that the term skull in Grecian terms is Golgotha. The land where Christ went was Golgotha, means skull. All of these things are indicative of deeper understandings of a thing. So you don't have to debate with it, because it's always going to lead back to this right here, because you got to know thyself to be approved. If you don't know who you are, then you're lost. Chris, you're back, brother. Go ahead, man. You were cut off, and I know you were about to go in.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I was gonna go on something that you said, but it was trying to bring it to mind again. I'll pause back and I'm gonna let it come back to my memory. I'm gonna jump back in again because it sparked something in my I really wanted to go in on it.
Oh, no problem, King. No problem.
Chris, we were talking about having your ancestors buried away from you in that graveyard.
Oh yeah. Okay, exactly. All right. So this is me personally. This is just all right. So we all have an umbilical cord, right? You know, so we all know for a fact, physically, we can see we come from someone that perceives us, that precedes us. We come from someone that's previous to us, but obviously, when we copulate with a mate, we're preceded by individuals, generations after, before. I personally do not know every single one of my ancestors, I'm saying, and especially being a stolen African in America, I'm lucky that I know enough about my immediate family and things like that. So to me, when it comes to the whole ancestor thing, I mean, it's very ambiguous and it's very vague. And to me, personally, it's more of a memory factor. And necessarily, they don't have to necessarily be physically around me or buried near me, although some are within the area that I live in, you know what I mean? But I mean, I have so much family that they're not, so.
Hey, that's why some people that subscribe to it, they have altars in their homes, and they put whatever that particular ancestor favorite.
Oh, I agree to that,
altar to help keep the memory, there. So every time they look at that altar or they enter that room, they automatically think of their ancestor without actually having them be close by. And that's why altars are highly respected.
Yeah, let me
because of
say
that.
something real quick to that too, Mel. Is like, you can like use a picture or a actual object of the individual or something maybe that the individual like to do. And just like in life, we need food, liquid, things that sustain life. You know what I'm saying? But on that aspect of revering the ancestors, it's more of an energy transference. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally agree.
So yes, we want to give we want to kind of rock the boat here. We weren't trying to bring about what we think or control a person's mind with this. What we were trying to do is get you to look deeper into something, because we had a person literally try to ask us rhetorically, which was really being disrespectful, is VODUN a science, knowing damn well what we gonna say. And so we wanted to satisfy this ignorant person by giving them some knowledge and some understanding, and kind of let people know that don't get, we're not gonna get lost in the sauce like that. It is not that easy to come to somebody with some common sense. It's one thing to be a scholar. It's a greater thing to be a scholar with common sense, because you got common sense way before you got all that information that you're holding on so dear. And it's funny how that conundrum goes, because the knowledge gets updated every 10 damn years. Every 10 damn years, you got to reread the same shit you've been reading. This is why the Greeks created a statue of a man sitting on the chair, thinking. Not going no damn well, just sitting on that rock, thinking and thinking and thinking, and not getting shit done. So as African peoples, we were moving, we were tilling the land, we were building, we were sitting still stagnant. The physical matched our mental. So if your brain is active, your physical needs to be active too. So you got to be in a community, you got to be building and interacting and exchanging, so that your universe continues to expand. And if you don't keep up with the universe, it's going to leave you behind, because the universe never moves backwards. It's an outward forward feeling. So we define it as forward, but it expands upon itself continuously, the same way you do within your culture's evolution. If you don't believe in evolution, look at your own family. You are the evolution of both of your parents, two organisms that came together and gave birth to a hybrid organism that took on likenesses of the other two organisms, the Trinity. Christ. Very simple, y'all. Don't require a whole lot of, so that way you don't have to debate Christ. Oh, you talking about Christ? You talking about consciousness. You talking about redemption of knowledge. Oh, Christ crucified on the cross with the two thieves. Oh, you talking about the Ida and Pingala nerves at the base of the skull. Oh, yeah, they do serve as memory centers. I got you. Okay, cool. Yeah, Christ was crucified on the cross. I got you. No problem.
Hey, you got to save that. You got to save that for another show. They ain't coming in for that.
Yeah, I just threw a tidbit out there.
You got to come back for that one.
Right. Look, we got an upcoming show, everybody. Before we close out, I'm gonna open the floor for everyone to close out. We're going to be talking about Lucifer, son of God. Yes, Lucifer, one of my favorite. Man. I think this one is going to be a good show. Particularly with, Melvin has an affinity too. Actually, Melvin's quite the Renaissance man with that. But I know Chris is probably going to be jumping all over the place to talk about that. And I know Haru is going to get some laughs. Yeah, with that particular subject matter. But it's going to be Lucifer, son of God. Yes, we said it. Lucifer is the beloved son of God.
All I got to say is Isaiah 45. 7.
Oh, Who?
Hey, save that. Save
What
that.
you say,
I'm,
Floyd?
Save that.
I'm saving it. I'm saving it. I just had to
Save
throw that
that.
out
No,
there. I had to give them something to look
no.
forward
Save
to.
that.
I had to give them something to
Save
look
that.
forward to, yo.
Listen. We want to make sure that when they show up for that show, they got their Bibles and their notepads ready. Save
Ooh,
that.
man,
I'll
who took it
say
there?
this though.
Hey,
I'll say
Kuzma,
this
you
though.
there?
I'll say this real quick.
Go
The
ahead.
teaser for that show is actually on the Team Osiris channel, the other Team Osiris channel. So if you haven't seen that video, you're gonna see that video and get ready.
And speaking of YouTube channels, we got 2 YouTube channels. We got Team Osiris and Team Osiris Rises. Man, please like, comment, and subscribe while you're sitting here listening to the live broadcast. Man, share it and make sure you like and comment and subscribe. We like all the comments, whether positive or negative. We don't feel offended by it, none the least. We actually take in all information as good information. So, you know, say what you want to say. Give us some feedback. Like the channel, man. Like Team Osiris channel. Go to Team Osiris on www.teamosiris.com. Check out the website. Donate to our GoFundMe because we use it for research. We also have an online library which we give out to the public. Melvin, could you please tell them about our online library that you put together? Could you please tell them?
Yeah, basically, you know, I started a library, collecting a lot of resources, paperwork, books, and things like that. And so, you know, over time, it just grew tremendously beyond, you know, what I ever thought it would be. And, you know, I just share it to the people. I mean, at the end of the day, these are books, and, you know, no need charge the people for something that, you know, they can't afford. If you can't afford it and you got it, then you got it. It's just a matter of asking.
Yes,
You know,
sir.
check that out. You know, also check out the Team Osiris Facebook page. Check out the Team All-Set Facebook page. You know, we on there. You know, ask us any questions you want. You know, anything.
One brother asked a question, and this I was gonna close out, but this is the question here. And it shout out to the brother Yeshua Libya now. You know, he's a wild guy. He's a cool guy. Shout out to you, bro. I'm laughing at this back chat. This is the question from the brother in the back chat. How or what is the correct approach to reading the Bible? I'm gonna start with Haru. How or what is the correct approach to reading the Bible, brother Haru?
Well, that's a loaded question, isn't it? I'm sorry, that's a loaded question. This is the thing when it comes to something like that.
Don't do this to me live, bro. Don't do this.
No,
Please.
this is the thing. This is the thing. I'll look out for everybody with this answer. This is the thing. When it comes to reading the Bible, it depends on what perspective you're reading it from. There are several different perspectives to see the text from. It just would depend on what you favor or what you have going on. And I'm going to leave it at that. I got some other things I could say, but I'll save that for later.
Really, brother, I applaud you, brother. Go ahead. Go ahead, brothers. Who wants to talk about that? Who wants to answer that question?
Yeah, I'll say this. You definitely want to be very, very careful with your reading of the text because, like Henry said, it's not as linear as you think it would be. So I would, try to be open-minded as possible. Most people, they just read it word for word, verbatim, and take it for face value. And I think you rob yourself of some good lessons if you do it that way. So, like you said, we're gonna save that for the next show.
Yeah, buddy.
You see that?
It's definitely levels to this. It's definitely levels to it.
Organized lie defeats disorganized truth every time. Ooh, wee. Brother Chris?
Yeah, just like anything, I mean, read what you're reading for one. Read it at face value. Do not add your own interpretations of what you may like the text to say. Once you can do that, if you can trace that text to a primary text, or scroll or papyrus or whatever it may be, try to do so. And if you can do that, then of course with its original written language or not. But regardless, you know what I'm saying, I mean, even reading at a secondary level without a primary source, take it at face value, you know what I mean? You can't come in reading a text that was written almost 2,000 years ago, but I'm going to interpret it from 2016. You know, I mean, like that's not like that's insane. That's stupid. I don't even know the way to say it, and I apologize for that, but it's a term.
I'm with you.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Hey, if you want to, you can give them some homework. And they take those 8 values
Okay, prime
that you
example.
mentioned.
Let me,
Real quick.
okay.
They could take those 8 values of culture that Kasu mentioned earlier, and they could take them and apply them to the text. That's some little homework that you can use to try to open up
That's the homework,
another way.
guys. That's the homework, y'all. Take those eight elements of culture and apply it to the Bible. Do that in your reading. Take those principles as you read through the chronology of what is called the Bible. You said the Bible, so I'm assuming you meaning things that are similar to maybe the New International Version or maybe the King James. Or I'm assuming you're talking about that. You didn't mention anything else outside of that. I don't think you meant Torah or anything like that. But for the sake of what you asked, yeah, that's a good homework assignment. That's good. I feel it. I'm with it.
Yeah, I'll say this in closing, because I know it's getting late. The ultimate goal of all of this is, we do want you to continue to read books. We do want you to continue to use dictionaries and continue to go to school and learn and be learned. We don't want you to lose your culture in the process. And that's what's happening with a lot of blacks or African Americans in America today, is that they're losing touch with their culture, and they're adopting another culture and don't realize that eventually, when you're speaking of evolution, they're changing their identity slowly. It starts with the mind, but eventually it gets into the habits. Humans are habitual, so you see things change, like food, the outfits, the way that they celebrate, the way that they talk. So you see, you're picking up habits and things that are not native to who you claim you are or who you claim your ancestors are from. So you're changing into an entirely different being. And again, if you don't believe in evolution, look at yourself. You're that. So try to hold on to your culture as much as possible, even if it's American culture, even if it's your great grandparents' culture. Try to hold on to that, because that is identity. That's the whole purpose. Culture is identity. So try not to forget that. Try to hold on to that, and you can still dabble into this modern world.
That's one of the main problems that we as African Americans have, is culture. We, for the most
That's why
part,
we speak on it, bro.
yeah, that's one of the main things. We have no sense of culture. Majority of us have no sense of culture, and this is leading to a lot of dysfunction. Adoption of other cultures that would have nothing to do with us. I mean, it's getting to a point where we're almost lost in the sauces. And right now, especially in the conscious community, it's a lot of us trying to find out who we are. But even in this paradigm, we're still losing ourselves even more because you're opening yourself up to so much information you don't know which way to go, and you see people making the wrong decisions all the time. So this is one of those things that kind of puts you in a conundrum when dealing with us versus culture. So I just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all lost. You never, know you're lost when you start. When you know you're lost when you don't know who you are, and I think that's our problem. And when you don't know who you are, then you want to attach to other cultures and adopt other aspects of these cultures because you're still looking for our identity. And of course, they won't fit at first, but over time, eventually they'll become a part of you. So, like you said, I agree. That's our problem. And we have no identity because we have no culture.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny. The one of the craziest things about it to me is we ourselves, as a whole unit, some of us have a sense, but as a whole unit, for the most part, we don't know who we are. But it's crazy because the Europeans know who we are, and where most of us came from, they know who we are.
Right.
But but we want to make up everything else in the book and try to fly every other way but what it is. But
Hey, Ru, hey, you said it. Let me end it on this, and this is mine. It's something that you said earlier, Kansu. I wish I could go back to exactly what you said, but I'm gonna drop it like this. It's like and I believe it may be Genesis or something like that, and I don't be quoting the Bible at all like that. But I guess in the beginning or something, before the word you had God, and we as a species existed before language, before the complex verbal communication, which led into art forms and other external things in reality, which are projections of our own minds, because ideas in our mind started as mental projected pictures, which later became words which we identify with external reality, so on and so on. But I just think it's very unique, as we as a species be very proud that, again, like and I like that quote is that, in the beginning, what I'm saying, before the word you had God. So, and we are God.
Definitely. That definitely. Hey, after the show, I don't think that our audience will look at cave art of a water buffalo the same way that they used to. I'm pretty sure of that.
Well, we got someone we keep trying. I guess everyone is engaged. Look, y'all, we've been online for 3 hours. Somebody has a question, but we've been online for 3 hours. So unfortunately, we coming to a close. They said I got a question, but they never put it out there. So
we can try to make you quick. We can
yeah, but I don't see they didn't. Con Battle. I don't remember your name. One brother put feminine principle. Very powerful. We're going to go into that. African-centered spirituality is all about the female. No question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, some people
that does itself.
A black woman is God, but she a lot greater than God. A lot greater than that God term.
She definitely
she gave birth to it, of course.
And again, everybody out there, God is a term. So please don't think we're talking about your spirituality. God is a term.
Daga.
Daga. Daga. You know what I need? I need that dagger sound. Sonetta had that.
Like, that was dope. I gotta give him that. That was dope.
That was it.
When I say God personally, I'm talking about the gatherer of data, the gatherer of information, he who observes, I'm saying, the awareness, you know what I mean? And that's my definition. You can run with your I know the original terms and all that shit, but we're not using that.
Yes, sir. Man, Yahshua, man, he back here dropping bombs. Okay. Hey, Yahshua, we see you, bro. Okay, Khan. Gave you a chance, man. What's up, Kimmy King? Peace to you, brother. Peace to now I'm gonna have to start naming everybody. I don't know why I started that. Black Fabe Blood 06. What's up, King? Peace, man. Menace Meech all the time, bro. You know, you 100, bro. You know, you truly are Team O.S.I.R.I.S potential, man. So what's up? And of course, Anuket of Kemet. What's up, Queen? Peace, goddess. Ashamed to be here, man. That's the Ankh killer. He came in for a minute, but he probably on his mission.
Yeah, that's the killer of the God killer.
So, you know, with that being said, man, we appreciate
the cycle of life. The God killer eventually gotta go. Exactly.
You're gonna have a nemesis, kid. So we appreciate everyone participating. This is a great build. And we're gonna be back again like we always do. Team Osiris is always on the horizon. And be free to visit us on all those outlets, man. We actually are working on an Instagram. Somebody asked me about Instagram. We need to do that. We get an Instagram and a Twitter, y'all. We're going to get that going. So with that being said, man, peace, power, love, unity, and all that good stuff to everybody out there, man. Consul Shesh Mamoon, Melvin the Archivist, Heru, the brother Christopher, the brother Kufu, and without a doubt, brother Joseph, brother, oh man, to those who, brother Gishi Gullah, the founder, brother Amir Kamara, aka Gaisi Ngozi, the brother Sahel, and who am I missing, man?
Team all set, bro.
Brother Dwayne. Oh shit, Team all set. She in here, but I think she's just busy. I think she working or something. But yeah, Nefaka, from all of us,
Brother Nazir.
Huh?
I said, Brother Nazir, if you ain't already shot him out.
Oh yeah, Nazir, what's up, bro? What's going down? Peace, power, and love, y'all. We out.